This is an author. It wrote a book with intent, and then it died. Don't worry though, because it's not actually dead. It's a reader now. There are actually lots of readers and they all have interpretations. But one reader's interpretation is also an intent. And sometimes it pokes its head out of the author's grave to tell us about it. And now we have paratext. Does this reader's intent make its interpretation more important than the rest? What if other readers put their interpretations into their own books? Now their interpretations are also intents with their own paratext. At this point, I would argue that the reader has become an author, or better yet, the audience have become artists, and their adaptations are art. But where does that put our author's paratext? I think things like short stories, poems, and world building live over here with our adaptations, as an author-turned-reader's adaptation of its own work, while things like letters to readers or character analyses live with the rest of the reader's interpretations. Since the author is now a reader, it does not warrant a privileged perspective. It still retains some privileges. Only the author can declare that a sequel or prequel or spin-off, even one by another author, is part of the same artwork as the original. The author controls canon. Yet, it cannot exert control over adaptations that form their own canon. Well, legally it has some options to prevent adaptations, but we don't care about that right now. Now, while the author's perspective is not inherently privileged, we can choose to privilege it. We can separate the author's paratext back out from the other reader's interpretations and adaptations and critique the artwork through the lens of authorship theory, where the author's intent is all important. We call this an authorial reading. But we could instead consider the text through the lens of new criticism, where we only consider the text itself and absolutely none of its context. This is called a close reading, and it's what you'll most often encounter in a high school English class. Then, going down the line, we could also take the approach of reception theory, where the reader's interpretation is all important. This is a contextual reading, and you can technically apply it to any audience as long as you understand their unique circumstances. The key word there being understand. You might know a lot of trivia about a culture, but that doesn't mean you understand it, so take care with contextual readings. And finally, we get to the adaptations with their own authors, readers, texts, and paratexts. We can perform authorial readings, close readings, and contextual readings on adaptations. But we can also jump headfirst into the literary deep end of adaptation studies and perform a comparative reading. What did the author of the adaptation add, remove, or change? What does that say about their values compared with the values of the author of the original? Is the adaptation in a different medium? How do the limitations of the original and adapted mediums affect the artwork? Let's compare two different adaptations. How are they similar? How are they different? How do they compare with the text they're adapting? Let's draw from the paratext of all three artworks and the contexts of the authors. We can bring in our own context too and ask ourselves how this story has retained its relevance across time and culture. How is it relevant to us right now? What about a story that has been adapted thousands of times? Suddenly, we're not looking at an ordinary artwork anymore. Now, we're studying folklore, the most important art to any culture. The art whose artists have died 1,000 deaths to make way for 1,000,000 births across all time and space, splintering and shattering through every instant of an infinite and ever-evolving ocean we call culture. The author is dead. Long live the authors.